Saturday, so I have to like
This picks up.
during the
Okay.
week.
Okay, but anyways, have fun with this. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Lon. Okay, guys, I am so excited and happy that Peggy Forbes is here. She's from the Aboriginal Centre. She is a student Aboriginal advisor and coach. And she comes to us with a lot of information about diversity, cultural competency, Indigenous protocol, or sure day, say dressed appropriately. I really enjoyed speaking with Peggy. Whenever we get a chance, we're both always so busy, but I think there's a very rich cultural aspect to what we're going to learn today. And it's so important that we incorporate that in our practice and about our heritage and about our human just really about the whole interprofessional aspect of working together in a community. The other thing I want to say is that there is also a field placement component with the Aboriginal Centre, and Peggy is wonderful. Peggy and Julie are both very wonderful at helping you facilitate different ways to reach out to the Aboriginal community here at Durham College and UIT. So without further ado, I'll let Peggy take over and tell us some wonderful things. So thank you very much. Thanks for coming, Peggy.
Anyway, so Ani Bojo, Before Michigan Indigenous Cause, Makwa Odem, Algonquins of Pikwakanagan contingent. So what I'm saying is by opening and talking in the language, we're saying my spirit greets your spirit and vice versa. It's connecting us. So what I said is, hello, my name is, actually my traditional name is Winter Turtle. But I'm Peggy, I'm Peggy. I'm from Pikwakanagan First Nation, I'm Algonquin, and I'm Bear Clan. And before we start, I'd like to recognize that we are on the traditional territories of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation. This is their territory that we're visiting on. So this is a presentation on cultural competency that actually did come out of an organization called Anishinaabe Health in Toronto that provides health services, both Western medicine and traditional modalities, holistically. What they were finding was that when, specifically for this, when the health professionals were going out into the field or interacting with Aboriginal people, there was a huge disconnect. So they saw the need for cultural competency training. So that's what this is going to be. So at any time, if you have questions, feel free to ask. Okay, this can be really interactive, and I want you to not feel worried about any question. Ask me anything. I won't be offended by any of it. I promise you, I've heard it all. Okay, so anyway, by the end of this, I hope that you will have a better understanding of the historic things that have gone on with Aboriginal people, and we'll bring it forward to current day today. It gives you an idea of maybe why people are in a situation where they are right now. So that's what I just said there. It starts with treaties. How many people here are Canadian citizens? Yeah. How many people here are treating individuals? Yeah, that would be all of you. Because the fact that you're on the traditional land here and you're able to function, go to school, work, live, means that you have a treaty relationship with the First Nations. So treaties would have been made on your behalf years and years and years ago. So there's still over 500 outstanding treaties. So just because when we say First Nations people or Aboriginal people, it actually is three groupings of people. So First Nations could be on reserve, off reserve, status, non-status, Métis, and Inuit. So with those treaties, those outstanding treaties, it means that those people or those groups of people, they haven't come to an agreement yet, a settlement yet. So it's still outstanding. So this is called the Two-Row Wampum, and this is one of the very original treaties. And the whole idea around this would have been made with shells back in the day. So if you can imagine, this is a body of water, a river of water. And on these two sides, on one side would be the European vessel, and going down this way would be a canoe, Aboriginal people. So the whole idea was recognizing that both groups of people have their own history, their own laws, their own governance, their own education, their own culture, and respecting one another's without interference, right? Going down the river of life together, as long as the grass grows green and as long as the rivers flow. So is this what you think happened and is happening? No, it really, really didn't. There was a whole lot of interference, as we know. We'll get into that. So the Indian Act, and it is still called the Indian Act, by the way. Anybody know why? Just fun fact. Oh. Christopher Columbus was lost. He thought he was in India. So we became the Indians. And according to the government, we're still considered Indians. So that gets kind of confusing for people who are actually from India. And then there's us, right? So this is not the favorite word for us to be called, by the way. So, but it is still a live document. So anybody who is a status card holder, Indian or First Nations person, is actually governed through this Indian Act today. So it was enacted in 1876 by the government, and it does provide Canada's federal government exclusive authority to legislate in relations to Indians and lands reserved for Indians. So it was amended in 1920 to make residential schools mandatory for at mostly the age 7 to 13, but somewhere as young as 3. And one of our elders, Shirley Williams, she tells us she remembers an 18-month-old baby coming in. So very, very young age. And the goal was to assimilate Indigenous children by educating them away from their family and community. The first one opened in 1840, and the last one closed in 1996. How many of you were born before 1996? Yeah, so realistically, this is not something that was a long, long time ago, right? That's not that long ago. Two primary objectives of the residential school system were to isolate children from the influence of their homes, families, traditions, and cultures, and to assimilate them into the dominant culture. And this is a direct quote from Duncan Campbell Scott, to kill the Indian in the child. So if you think about United Nations, that's the exact definition of United Nations, to forcibly remove one group of people and make them live into another group of people's ways. Schools resulted in affecting individual, family, and community health, led to intergenerational harm, and by that we mean that we think of things in terms of 7 generations. So even though I didn't go to residential school, nor did my dad, somebody in my family did. So I'm in that 7-generation loop, and anything I do today will affect 7 generations to come. So we don't really think about just today, right? And it'd be really selfish for us to think that way, actually. Some of those who attended the schools failed to learn good parenting and coping skills. Why is that? Where did we learn to be a good parent? Yeah?
From our parents and our family.
Right, exactly. So if bad things are happening there and you have role models that are abusing you and normalizing that, that's what you tend to believe it's supposed to be, right? These schools were enacted by the government and the churches, by the way. So they literally would put the fear of God into these kids and make them do away with their own ways of life, own language, culture. They could not speak their own language. And if they did, they would be beaten. So many people weren't able to really cope if they survived abuse in the residential school system. And it led to high-risk behavior, drinking, addictions, because, again, you don't know how to have a healthy relationship if abuse is what you saw as normal. So in 2008, there was an apology from the government. I don't know if anybody's ever saw that. You should check it out, though, the Harper government at the time. And many Aboriginal people think it was kind of like lip service in a way, because it wasn't really, really heartfelt. But that being said, at least it recognizes it as happening, because most of you probably didn't learn about this in school, right? I know I didn't learn about it in school. And it really is one of Canada's deepest, darkest secrets. So you can check it out. It would be worth your while. So a couple quotes from that apology. The government now recognizes that the consequences of the Indian residential school policy were profoundly negative, and that this policy has had a lasting and damaging impact on Aboriginal culture, heritage, and language. The legacy of Indian residential schools has contributed to social problems that continue to exist today in many communities. And then, if that wasn't bad enough, here comes the child welfare system. So there's something that is commonly termed as the 60s scoop, where children were just taken from families for virtually no reason. And it's still happening today. I read something not too long ago that in Winnipeg it's really, really bad. 1 in 3 Aboriginal children will be in care. Yeah. So this is sort of a comparison of worldviews and how Aboriginal paradigm. So we think in terms of everybody, our whole community, right? It's not just about me and my family, it's about the whole community being well, right? So you have people that are shoemakers, people that are hunters, people that are gardeners, people that are seamsters. Everybody has a role to play and is equal in a community. Non-linear perspective, normally when we do presentations and things, and this is an exception, we do it in a circle, right? Because that way everybody can see everybody eyes. It builds a sense of safety and community. And I would be sitting as well because I don't know any more than you guys know. I just know something maybe a little bit different than what you know, right? Time orientation, things happen when they're supposed to happen. Some people will joke, and there's this thing called, it makes me crazy, Indian time. That doesn't exist. People say, oh yeah, well, we can be late because it's Indian time. No, that's not okay, right? Really, if you listen to your own body and go with the seasons, you will do things when they're supposed to be done. Like if Indian time was real and Native people were late all the time, we wouldn't have survived. We wouldn't have hunted when we should have hunted, or planted when we should have planted, etc. Oneness with nature, we believe everything is living, everything has a soul. So when we hunt, we would give thanks. We put down tobacco to say thank you to that animal for giving its life. And we would use every part of that animal, so nothing would be wasted. Holistic, so you can kind of see, it's got moccasin on it, mind you, but that's a medicine wheel. So when we tell the students this too, for the Aboriginal Student Center, that you're here for an academic purpose, but if you don't take care of the other pieces, the emotional, the physical, and the spiritual pieces, whatever that means to you, then you will become ill. You won't succeed. So at the Aboriginal Student Center, we provide all of those things in-house, if that's what Aboriginal students prefer to do. And it's about balance, right? Any questions so far? No? So it's been proven that when a community or a group of people has been given the power to make their own decisions, they will thrive. Suicide rates drop, and the community gets well and healthy. Because you know what you need. I know what I need, right? Who am I to say what you need? You know what I mean? So that was the study that was successful. There's more Aboriginal people living off reserve than on reserve. I don't know if you know that. People tend to think that we all live on reserves. I've never lived on reserve myself. Neither has my dad. And anyway, so what that means is that we're amongst you, And it's funny because we've only been here at Durham College since, it's coming up to 7 years in March. And prior to that, there was a feeling that there was no Aboriginal students, which is kind of ridiculous because maybe I don't look like Pocahontas, but I'm Aboriginal, and so there's many faces of Aboriginal people. There's some posters around campus you might have seen, and there's one that's a copulation, I think 9 photos are there, and everybody looks very different. We even have a guy that's a ginger, and Julie, my coworker, she has blue eyes, right? Many people have fair skin, it's not a cookie cutter. So there's issues even in urban settings. One of our elders, he told us a story that he went to the Oshawa Center, and from the moment he walked in there to the moment he left, he was followed by a security guard. So there's an assumption there, right? And we're trying to break down those stereotypes for Aboriginal people. There is discrimination, very much so. Not even that long ago, about 10 years ago or so, my dad, who's the Aboriginal one, and my mom, they went to go to our home powwow, and they wanted to stay at a motel nearby, and they were refused. They said, we don't rent to Native people. So yeah, it still happens. It's crazy, but it does happen. Boundaries, that has to do more with the government, basically, like federal and provincial governments. Nobody really wants to be responsible for the Aboriginal people because it's a money battle, right? So people with status card, I'll clear up any myths here, because everybody thinks, okay, we get free education. Not true. Some people do, but not most of them, right? Even though that was the original agreement with that True Wampum, right? We would, the agreement was that we would teach you what we know, and you would teach us what you know. And it would be reciprocal, right? So education, that's one of them. Health, yes, we do get health care, but the very basic stuff, whatever's cheapest. Dental, yes, but the cheapest solution to teeth is to pull them, right? So many people might have poor teeth. You guys are going to find that out being dental hygienists. So that's an issue, right? Because then otherwise, if you don't have benefits, like in my case, I have benefits here as well, so I can, you know, whatever Indian Affairs doesn't cover, my benefits will cover here, or I pay the difference. Taxes, that's a good one. PST, we're exempt from PST. But I pay property taxes on my house, I pay income tax, I'm taxed, you know, off my paycheck here. And GST, well, we all just got ripped off on that anyway, because it was supposed to be temporary. So what else is there? Is there anything more about the status card? Because that seems to be the thing that people are like, oh, I wish I had that. Like, do you wish you had all the stuff, the intergenerational trauma that came with it too, though, you know? Okay. So you'll see that if you spend any time around Aboriginal people, we're pretty humorous, or we think we are anyway. We laugh a lot. It's kind of ridiculous. I'll tell you a funny story. Whoever's listening to this online will be like, oh my God. When we first started here, Julie and I, we had to do a presentation. We did a smudge and a presentation to the leadership team, the big guys who make the decisions here at the college, right? So we were off-site. We were outside on a patio, and then we did our thing out there, and then we were coming in. And then I was the last one to walk in, and I am clumsy all the time, right? And I fell. I tripped over my own feet. I fell. My dress went up. It was terrible, right? And Julie was busting the gut, laughing, while everybody was jumping up from the table, running to try and come save me. And Julie couldn't stop laughing, you know? But that's how we roll, right? You know, eventually, you know, she might have got around to saying, are you okay? I was fine, just my ego was hurt. So we want to build trusting relationships. So by doing presentations like this and me telling you about some of the horrific things that happen to Aboriginal people, it's not about blaming and shaming at all. It's about sharing our true history, about what really, really happened. Right? And in your jobs, you're going to need to have some empathy because you don't know the people's story, right? It wouldn't be a bad idea to talk with them, chat with them a little bit, get to know them, see how they would like to be referred to, because some people, you know, the whole Aboriginal, First Nations, Indigenous is the new sexy word. I guess it'll change again in about 10 years because it keeps just changing. So I don't get too caught up in those kinds of things. So, with reconciliation, how could we get back to this? Do you think it's possible to get back to this kind of way of living? Right? Yeah, by doing things like having an Aboriginal Student Center for Aboriginal students, right? That's a start, you know, and different organizations. There's many, many organizations in Toronto that offer services to Aboriginal people. Durham Region is a little behind in doing that, but it's coming along. I've been on a board for 4 years called Bawa Degewin, and it's an Aboriginal community board that's incorporated. Hopefully, maybe one day down the road a little bit, we'll have a friendship center here in Durham Region and then run services out of there. So that would be really, really cool. And if you guys are in the area still, like, some health programs would be happening too. Okay, so there's a couple other things I wanted to mention coming up. Really exciting stuff. I'll do this one first. This is, you see it, Orange Shirt Day. So Orange Shirt Day happens every year on September 30th, but here at the college we're going to celebrate it on the 29th. And it's really about recognizing that every child matters, whether the children made it out of residential school or they did not make it. So this is something that the college is taking on as part of the Truth and Reconciliation Calls to Action and Indigenizing the Campus. So in 2016, 2015, Durham College signed the Indigenous Education Protocol. So what that means is Durham College is committing to indigenizing the campus, right? Because currently there is a gen ed offered that's in an Aboriginal culture course, but that's all there is. And out of the TRC, the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action, there were 94 calls to action or recommendations. And specifically related to post-secondary, they were saying programs should have at least one Aboriginal course embedded in the core structure of their program in health, justice, and media. So we've been working closely with those three category programs here at the college and trying to look at ways in how we can put culture into your courses. So leading up from this too, my new hero for the last year or so, Gord Downey from Tragically Hip, project here called The Secret Path. So I brought some cards, I'll leave them with you. So on October, I'll tell you the 22nd, they're going to be viewing this publicly for the first time. You can go online and buy tickets. There'll be a panel with some survivors. Shirley Williams that I mentioned earlier, she's going to be one of the, she's a survivor. She's going to be there as a panelist, as well as some other people. And there's going to be like an auction and some sort of fundraising things to go along with it. But I really encourage you to check this out if you can. And we have a colleague that does a lot of work in the community. So next year it's the Masters Indigenous Games. I don't know if you guys were around in the summer, but we hosted NAG, the North American Indigenous Games athletes here. We housed them, basically 450 athletes on campus. So yeah, it was really, really cool. So our center, the Aboriginal Student Center, stayed open from 8:30 till like 10 or 10:30 at night so that they would have a place to go instead of just staying in their room. So that was pretty neat. So this is sort of the adult version of that. So you can keep your ears posted for that. Are there any questions? You guys are so quiet. Is it because it's being fun? No. Yeah?
What's your name, Winter Turkey?
Oh, Elder Gerard Sagasage gave it to us. I'll tell you a story about that. One of these stories. So we did it as a group because we run a program called Cedar Tea out of Caria Health Center. That used to be the Oshawa OCHC. But anyway, anyhow. The group identified that they wanted to get their names, right? Because they didn't have that connection. So Gerard agreed to do it. So, like I said, I'm Bear Clan. So Julie, my coworker, is Turtle Clan. So one thing that commonly happens between Aboriginal people is we'll tease each other. I'll say, Bear Clan's better than the Turtle Clan. We can eat you. You know what I mean? This kind of stuff, right? So then we were getting our names. I was last. And I was thinking, it's going to be something Bear. I know it is, right? And so my name, Bipawan Machikan, is Winter Turtle. Like, no, now I have to respect the turtles. I can't make fun anymore. So it was funny. We laughed quite a bit about that. Still do. Yeah, so it's usually from an elder that you get it. Yep.
Do you guys have any programs that connect the up north suicidal mental crisis?
Actually,
do you have
with
anything
the
going
Global
on up
Classroom,
there?
we're going to be working towards that. We're
Okay.
working with Lon and talking and in discussions with exactly that topic.
Because I wanted to a little while ago, I wanted to hook up with someone, do a pen pal type thing.
Oh, yeah.
So I didn't know if you guys had any programs that connect
Well,
to
there's
up there or
friendship
anything.
centers all over Ontario. Oh, that could be one way that you can check out. There's I think there's 29 or 30 friendship centers. So they're in remote spots as well.
Okay.
So you might be able to reach out to a friendship center for that.
Okay.
Class card for it too.
Oh, thank you.
Because we've got lots developing.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, it's going to be exciting. In the new building, we're going to be neighbors too.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
access will be really easy. Because we really want to do that because we recognize that a lot of people can't make it out of the north or remote flying communities, right? So Lon's going to do some magic and helping them get hooked up with us.
And Bandini Sefi
Yes.
is a professor here, is working now to develop some things with the First Nations University and
Yeah,
you guys.
she's in the justice program here. She's been working closely with us and media as well. Yeah, so it's pretty exciting. Yep.
I went to school in Coburg, and just down the road we have Alderville, like
Yep.
all the First Nations. So we had like a ton of stuff always going on there, like lots of Aboriginal. Like they would always invite us out for like meetings, and we could watch all like, I don't know what they call it when they have like their celebrations. And they have
Powwows?
yeah.
Yeah.
But it was like the competitions and stuff because my friend was in them.
Yeah.
And I just know they had a lot of stuff like going on out there for
Yeah, and that's in the Kawarthas. I don't know if you know where it is.
Yeah.
Kind of about an hour and 20 minutes from here. In that area, there's actually 3 First Nations: Alderville, Hiawatha, and Curve Lake.
Yeah.
And this weekend is Curve Lake's powwow. A little plug for Curve Lake. If you've never been to a powwow, you should check it out.
I went to that one.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a good one, yeah. So I've been doing powwows like all summer. My partner is Mick Mon. He's a drummer and dancer, so we go to everything. Either I work it or we're there because of him, usually. Yeah, I think we have 1 weekend off this summer. Yeah?
So First Nations are divided into many, just different groups.
Yeah.
Different
Excellent question. Yeah, so I'm Algonquin, right? So Algonquin is one of the original groups, and from there, then it kind of morphed into being called Anishinaabe, which means the people in the language. And like Julie herself is Ojibwe, so she would claim Anishinaabe. But even though I could say Anishinaabe or Algonquin either way, but then there's Cree people, there's Haudenosaunee people, which are the Iroquois people. And then there's OG Cree mix. There's like tons. Like if you think of Europe and all the different countries within Europe having their own languages, their own customs, their own culture, their own religion, that's kind of us. We're very different. Not so much the Anishinaabe people, but Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe people, very, very different. Like we do lots of things in a circle, but we always go to the left. We follow the sun. They go to the right. Right? So it's really kind of neat, like when you go to a powwow, because they're dancing that way, and you have to really kind of be mindful of that, right? Just different things. And none of it's better or worse than the other, but it's different. And lots of people don't realize that. They think if you're native, you're native, you're native. It's all the same, right? The language is different, all sorts of things. Yeah?
Is it getting like harder and harder to get a status card?
Yes, that's a government thing. The government makes it as difficult as possible. And yeah, you have to prove and prove and prove. And for so many people, that can be really difficult because of that child welfare system. If they didn't know, if they were adopted out, they don't know who their family is, they may never find out and they may never get their status card. So I'll give you an example. Julie has 2 kids, and she sent in their application with the exact same stuff needed, and there's a lot of stuff you need. Sent it all in. 1 came back denied, 1 came back perfect. This is crazy. Yeah, this one that was denied didn't have enough of the right information. Meanwhile, it was identical what she had sent in. Yeah, so that's very, very common, that kind of thing to happen. It's a long process. Because once you're status, then they have an obligation because of the treaties, right?
Yeah.
So the government doesn't really want to do that. And, the whole idea was to wipe us out, right? So they don't want to be responsible.
My sister-in-law is struggling with that right now for my nephew,
Yeah.
and she's about to just give up.
And that's what
She's about to
that's
just
what
be
they hope
like,
people
nah,
do, I'm
you're
sure.
fine to not have it.
Yeah. And you know what, the thing is, it's not about the benefits. For a lot of people, it's identity, And it's really, on the other side, I didn't get my status for the longest time because I thought, I know who I am. I don't need the government telling me who I am. No other group of people has to prove their identity. Nobody. You know how many times I've been asked, how native are you? Would I ever say how white or, you know what I mean? Like, what kind of question is that? Again, having to prove who I am. Like, why? Why is that so questionable? Yeah.
So it's kind of one of my dreams to where I end up living to go and work on the reserve that's there. But I know they're pretty opposed to having outsiders come in. Do you have any advice on how to bridge the gap as a white Christian female? I just want to go provide.
Yeah. I think there can be really good relationships for sure. And it really is about just easing in slowly and being respectful and kind and building that relationship. Not a lot of places would have the health services that you would be provided, and they have to go off reserve. Life on the reserve is I don't want to live on reserve, and children on the reserve get at minimum $2,000 less per child for schooling. Why is that? How can that happen? There's over 120 communities on boil water advisories, and many of them you can't even let it touch your skin, never mind boil it and use it. And that is not far away from here. Scugog Island, only 25 minutes up the road from here, is one of those communities. Now, how is that allowed to happen? If that happened in Oshawa, how long do you think it would go on before something was done about it? Yeah.
I have a friend who's native, and she was just at the Apple store the other day getting a laptop, and whatever she needed, they didn't have it stocked, so they said get it online. And she put her information in, like, to get her taxes exempt, and then she got an email from Apple saying that they wouldn't give it to her unless she lived on a reserve.
That is crazy. That's not true. That's not true. And in fact, if you go on to the Indian Act or the Government of Canada, it was called Indian Affairs, but it's Indigenous something now, of course. There's actually a process that if that happens to us, we can file a complaint against that store.
Well, she's going into law school, so she.
Oh, I know. She'll do it.
Interesting.
She'll be good. Good.
Yeah, it was just kind of bizarre.
Yeah, it is. It really. It's happened to me before. And then they say, well, you can choose to leave the store and not shop there. Or another store said, no, all I have to do is give you this form, this paper to fill in, and you send it in with your receipt, and then you wait for them to reimburse you. Like, forget that. That's crazy. I'll walk before I do that, and I do it out of principle. I was at Costco one time, which I love Costco, by the way, and I just pull my cart out all the time, right? And this was a couple years ago, and the person that, puts your stuff back in the cart said, wow, all that paperwork, it's only one little piece of paperwork, to save 87 cents or something like this. And I'm like, did I just hear that right? Like, this is not about the money. This is about my inherent right as an Aboriginal person. She's like, oh, got nervous. Oh, I have to too, if I were you. I understand. I'm not going to get you fired. Relax. It's okay. It's a learning opportunity. But yeah, every store sort of runs it differently, makes up their own rules, unfortunately, because there is a barcode on the card, so there's no reason why it just can't be scanned and done, right? 1 or 2 stores have done that before successfully. What a relief. And then other stores, if you can believe this, and I know one, I probably shouldn't mention it, they run a list. So literally, I can read up the page who's been here shopping ahead of me. How confidential is that? I still have to deal with that situation.
Yeah, I work at a grocery store that does that, and you have to call for a manager to come to your till, and it people in line get so mad at me,
yep.
And then
Yep. And you know what I say to the people in line? Yeah, get mad, because the government is making this as difficult as possible when there's no reason. There's a barcode. So yeah, get mad, phone, complain, do whatever. But don't be mad at me. I didn't put the system in place. But that's so true. Every store is different. Yeah.
On kind of a nice personal note, I went to the same camp for about 12 years. I worked there 1 year, Camp Kawartha, and they taught us, from a very early age about different clans, different creeds and stuff, so I knew a lot of that stuff already, and they taught it in such a way that it was super interactive. So kind of whoever was in attendance at camp, it changed a lot who was there, but a few of us followed through for years and years at camp because it was, I guess that's what you do when you're a kid. My mom just set me off, but it was super educational because it was a nature-based camp, so they were teaching us ways that Aboriginals would use resources and how they would make it very sustainable for themselves. They educated us on all of that, and it was I've worked as a cashier and I've gotten glares in such ways that's well, you don't really kind of understand what this all means. And I'm I do understand.
Yeah. I kind of assume, right?
Yeah, it's fair. No, and it's fair, but it's respectable, right? I come to learn that over many years.
That's good. That's really good to hear.
Yeah.
I just realized that I told you the wrong event. Orange Shirt Day is happening. But this is a different event, actually. Just reminded me we were talking about being on the land. So we have Joseph Pitawanakwit coming in next Wednesday. He'll be here all day, 10 till 4. So he's an Anishinaabe man who is really, really into medicinal properties of plants and medicines. So if you're interested in that, you might want to come. People can just drop in as your schedule allows. But it looks like it's going to be a popular day. So I'll leave this with you guys as well.
Sorry, is that next Wednesday?
Wednesday, Wednesday the 20th.
Because I tried to go last. Can I just ask a question? And this just sort of comes from even me, not really know, and I think your advice to us would be greatly helpful. And I'm wondering, even in because we obviously have a dental hygiene clinic here at Durham College, I wonder how we can make that more Aboriginal friendly. Because I feel that we have, I still remember the first when you first got here and we were talking, I was talking with you and Julie, and I said, well, we'd like to reach out to the Aboriginal community, and Julie looked at me and she goes, how do you know if you're not? So I think it's an important thing, because we don't really, so from our perspective, even from the students' perspective, I think there's a lot we still have to learn. Yeah. And I think we understand it from course perspective and stuff, but even just from being here in this smaller community, how can we make it more welcoming? How can we create something that would, that make it, sort of that much more accessible and more welcoming to our Aboriginal community, even just here at Durham College.
Yeah, I would say just be present, right? Come out to things like powwows. There's a big drum social happening as well. I don't have the flyer for that, but that's on September 30th, actually, at Purple Woods. So that's part of another group that I kind of move in this circle, but through CARIA and the Durham Region Aboriginal Circle. Is what it is. So that's like a community board, and based of organizations and people, non-native and native doesn't matter, but they do this 4 times a year. We have these big drum socials. So this one's going to be at Purple Woods, just straight up Simcoe, if you don't know where that is. And it's kind of neat. It's like a mini powwow, real cash, with vendors as well there, and drumming and dancing and singing. So yeah, just be present, and start building relationships, because that's what it's about. There's over 10,000 people, Aboriginal people in Durham Region. People don't even realize that, right? That's the ones that have self-identified, right? People don't self-identify for lots of different reasons, right? Because they don't want to be necessarily pigeonholed into a category, or they don't want the stereotypes to happen. Any other questions? Well, feel free to come visit anytime. We're in the Simcoe building, room 1264. Feel free to come and check us out. We're there every day. And if there's questions that you think about after, you want to come visit, anybody's welcome, by the way, at the Aboriginal Student Center. Okay? Or if you want to experience smudging, right, using the traditional medicines, we can do that. It's a purification, if you don't know the cleanse. Yeah. Okay?
Thank you so much, Peggy. If anyone has any questions or anything, I can actually, maybe we'll create a little group and go for a smudging ceremony.
Yeah, for sure.
One of our classes, I think that. Next week we can do our field place.
I'd like to be smudged, actually.
Yeah, you could use a smudge.
I could use a smudge, actually.
So maybe we'll plan that for next Thursday. We'll do a field place, and then we'll all get smudged. How's that?
Yeah.
That's a great idea, right?
Yeah, come.
I would. I'll talk to you about that. Okay, I'll tell you.
During
I'll send out
exam
the
time,
email. Yeah.
we get involved with the Stress Less Week, like at exam time, and we get like so many non-native people mostly coming saying, I don't know what smudging is, but I know I'm stressed. Can you help me? You know?
So this might be a good opportunity for all of us.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Can I keep a copy?
Yeah, of course.
I think what
All
I'll
right,
do is
thank you.
a little-
Okay, so yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And okay, so
All right, yeah. Anytime we can organize it, that's the thing, right?
Great, thank you very much.
yeah, for sure.
Great. Try to move us through this maze.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful, yeah.